Most of us grow up thinking retirement means saving a massive fortune, the kind where you can live lavishly off investment income and never worry again. But not everyone wants that kind of life. I wanted the minimum amount to just be done. I didn't need millions. I just wanted enough to be done. I wasn't dreaming of luxury homes or extravagant vacations. I just wanted freedom. I wanted to wake up without an alarm clock, decide what I was going to do with my day, and know that my bills were covered. I genuinely don't need much outside of the basic necessities. I wanted my health and my life back. I wanted to be happy. Some of us don't want more. We just want out of the grind, out of the constant stress of work. That's where a minimum freedom number comes in. That's the amount of money that lets you live simply, comfortably, and be done. Here's how I think about it. When you stop always wanting more, you start seeing how little you actually need to be happy. I don't need the newest car. I just need one that runs. I don't need a big fancy house. I just want one that's comfortable. I don't need a lavish life. I just needed a life with freedom. Many retirees live simple, fulfilling lives by keeping their costs low. They move to smaller towns or other countries. They garden, volunteer, take long walks, or work on passion projects. They don't escape life, they escape the hustle. Some people don't get it. They say, why stop working? You could make so much more money. But what they don't see is that more has a cost. Your time, your peace, your freedom. At some point, you realize the most valuable thing you can own is your time and your freedom. So if you're like me and you just want enough to be done, start planning for enough. Not perfection, not wealth beyond imagination, just peace, simplicity, and freedom. Because at the end of the day, retiring isn't just about money, it's about your time. And once it's gone, we can't buy that back. No one can tell you how much you need to live on. We all have such different expenses. It makes a huge difference where you live, if you're married, if you're healthy, if you own your own home, if you have debt, and on and on. So here's how I calculated my minimum freedom number. My hope is by sharing this, it can help you figure out yours. Tracking your spending is so important. You might think you have a pretty good idea how much you spend on things, but you don't really know until you track your spending for an extended period of time. I tracked my spending for a whole year. That might be overkill, but there are expenses that come up only once a year and you might forget about them. Once you have a good, solid monthly budget, you're ready to start calculating. You might also consider what costs might go up, what could go down, and what might be added or eliminated. The future is unknown. You just have to make assumptions and use a rule of thumb like the 4% rule for planning. After making an accurate monthly budget, multiply by 12 to figure out how much you're going to need annually. My original monthly budget was around $3,300 a month. There were a lot of areas where I could spend less if I needed to. I had paid off all debt, including my mortgage, and I lived very frugally. So I thought I needed around $39,600 a year in income for my annual retirement needs. Turns out I'm not spending anywhere near that. That's been a nice surprise. Then you need to subtract any sources of income you'll have in addition to your portfolio. I have a small pension that's about $9,600 a year. I had money saved up in a bridge account to cover my first year of retirement before I turned 59 and a half, and to cover a small gap in income until I take Social Security. I have income from YouTube that's been averaging around $1,000 a month. So that was $21,600 for my sources of income beyond my retirement accounts. So $39,600 a year needed minus $21,600 from my sources of income equals $18,000 needed from my portfolio each year. You can use the 4% rule for planning purposes, but personally, I decided I wanted to use 3.5%. I needed to figure out 3.5% of what size nest egg would equal $18,000. So divide $18,000 by 3.5%, which equals $514,286. That's how I came up with my minimum freedom number. This became my goal to save this amount for retirement. Would I have liked to save more than that? Of course I would. I wanted to work a little longer and have more money, but at some point I just decided I had to preserve my health and my sanity. That became more important to me than more money. So when we're planning, we can only think in terms of today's money. Inflation is obviously going to increase your costs in the future. We can plan for that by assuming that our investments grow in excess of inflation. My small pension has a COLA, and Social Security will too when I start that. So I was hoping to average 7% returns from my retirement portfolio. If I pulled a safe withdrawal rate of 3.5% each year, I'd have 3.5% to cover inflation without touching the principal. I know inflation can be higher and returns can definitely be lower. In order to make 7% returns, I have to keep some aggressive funds in my buckets. I'm not going to lie, that's hard for me, but I know I need to do that. CD and high-yield savings account rates are still okay right now, but not enough to keep up with inflation if I'm pulling 3.5% out. So I have to keep some money in aggressive funds. Using the bucket strategy allows me to do this without worrying all the time. With inflation, your spending will increase each year and your investments need to keep up with that. The 4% rule basically says that in the first year you withdraw 4% of your portfolio, and in the second year it's 4% plus inflation, and so on. 4% is a good rule for planning purposes. You wouldn't want to pull 4% from your portfolio in a bear market. This is where the bucket strategy comes in. I have several videos about the bucket strategy if you're interested. If you don't know your minimum freedom number, it's really hard to say if you have enough money when you can retire. Once you calculate the amount of money you need to save, it will motivate you to save. The closer I got to my goal of $500,000, the more motivated I was to save. There isn't a one-size-fits-all amount of money that's enough to retire on. You have to put the time in tracking, calculating, and planning to figure out your personal retirement number. So what about you? What is your minimum freedom number? If you want to share, feel free to leave a comment. If you're seeing me for the first time, hi, I'm Julie and this channel is Happy on Monday. Thanks for joining me. If you found this helpful, please like. And if you're interested in retiring early, consider subscribing. I'm going to leave you with a quote. Freedom means the opportunity to be what we never thought we would be. Hope to see you again soon.